Today I am going to be assembling some 4x4 hubs for 4th and 5th gen 4Runners, 2nd and 3rd gen Tacomas, LEXUS GX470, LEXUS GX460, and FJ Cruisers. This process will also be similar for some of the 120 series Toyotas that are available internationally, like Prados, etc. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be installing a seal onto the hub assembly. I am going to be installing the mounting bolts that go here. These are the ones that mount the hub assembly to the spindle, and I'm also going to be installing a new hub assembly. The process is pretty straightforward, but just in case, kind of take some of the guesswork out of everything. If you look at the hub assembly, you have a side that is half polished and a side that is fully polished. The fully polished side goes into the spindle, and it has a little groove here right at this area for a little O-ring, and that kind of acts like a dust seal, moisture seal. And on this side you have a half polished side, and that's the side that gets the seal. There are a few different ways to install this seal. One of them is to take something flat and just kind of hammer this into place around the perimeter on this metal body of the seal. Or you can press it down with something flat from the top. I don't like those first two options because you can actually damage the seal or create irregularities. So I'm going to show you the preferred method, and then I'm going to show you how to do a press plate on top and how to do that safely without damaging the seal. So what I've done is I had a laser cutting place cut me basically a half-inch washer, half-inch thick washer with a 91 millimeter center. And the outer diameter is not very important, but just in case you're curious, this is a 5 inches across. And what this does is it clears the softer and easy to damage portion of the seal, and instead rests on the seal body, which means that I can then press this down without having to worry about damaging any of the sensitive parts. You don't want to damage seal. If you have a seal that you damage, then you risk liquid intrusion, dust intrusion, sand intrusion, etc., which would be absolutely terrible. Now, because this seal doesn't fully sit evenly immediately, it takes some finagling once I put some weight on top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here, and then I'm going to show you guys once it's fully set up and ready to press. Okay. So what I did was, with two hands, I kind of centered it as best as I could. You can see one side's a little bit lower and one side's a little bit higher. And then once I had it a little bit as stable as I could, I used my ram here, my pump here, to lower the ram and kind of keep it in place. And being that this side is lower than this side, what I've done is I've placed my ram off center to put a little bit more leverage against this side. That way when it presses, it'll want to drop this side a little bit faster, and then it'll even out, and then you just press it and everything will be nice and even. So I'll go ahead and do that now. You don't need, even if you have like pneumatic power or something like that, you don't necessarily need it. You can just do it with your hand and just start pressing it on. And you'll see it start dropping nice and evenly, and you'll feel some significant resistance, and then that's it. Now let's say you just want to try to install it without that spacer that I made in the previous scene. You can also just put something flat on top of the seal, and you are going to want to just use your pump here without the bar, or if you have pneumatic power, without the pneumatic power. Doesn't take much to push that seal in, and it also doesn't take much to damage the seal and crush it. So if you do it with the hand pump, if you do it with just the, just your hand, you're going to feel significant resistance because you don't have that much leverage. And you'll know once it's fully seated, it won't move any further down into the polished area, and you don't risk damaging the seal here. So I'll give that a go now. So I feel significant resistance. I'm going to stop here and let it release. And the seal is intact, not crushed, and it's in perfect shape. Before pressing the hub on, you got to make sure you drop in these mounting bolts. If you press in the hub without the mounting bolts in place, you will not be able to get them in afterward, meaning you'll need to press the hub out to get enough clearance and then drop these guys in. So make sure you drop these in before pressing in the hub. Another press plate slash washer that I had made was this one here. This one, I have the bearing flipped upside down. When I do the press work, it's going to be back to the orientation that it's been the entire time in this video, but I wanted to show you what the underside of the bearing looks like. This washer slash press plate goes here, and what it does is it isolates the spinning function of the bearing so that while I'm pressing the hub in, I can actually spin this to make sure that I'm pressing the hub in nice and square. And I'll show you guys what I mean by that once I get to that portion. If you're curious, this measures 2¼ inches for the inner diameter. I will get the outer diameter and post that later. You don't want to go too wide because that'll engage the body here, which is higher than the inside portion of the bearing, which if you try to press this while it's flat, then you won't be able to do that spinning trick that I'm going to show you guys. Once you have that washer in place, it's important to check that it's not off center. So what I do is I just take my finger and just run it across the inner diameter and make sure that it actually clears. Everything is almost ready to press. I have that spacer underneath the bearing. I have bolts installed, seal installed, hub centered as well as possible. These tend to cock a little bit, so what I do is I press in a little bit, stop, recenter, and then press in again. And next thing that I've done is I've added some press plates onto the flange here, and then you want to check that you are centered. In this case, we're a little bit too far forward, so I'm going to move this assembly towards the front and as centered as possible. Okay, we're going to press a little bit, and once the hub starts to seat, I'm going to release, and then that will kind of reset it. And then if I'm noticing that it's going into a certain direction, I'm going to compensate for that. All right, so just put a little bit of pressure here. Go ahead and start. All right, so I'm going to stop here. I'm going to release, and it actually sat perfectly straight. So I'm just going to continue on to that path. Okay. One thing that I do like to do here is to just kind of turn this a little bit and make sure that it's nice and smooth. If you're finding that it's difficult to turn, you might want to back off the ram and check that you're nice and square. And if you're not, then make the corrections necessary to get it back to square and then start pressing again. In this case, it's nice and smooth, so no further corrections are necessary. I'm just going to go ahead and press it all the way in. Now, these things just kind of stop on their own. So once you hit some resistance, whether you're doing this with a pneumatic or whether you're using the lever, once it stops, that's just your cue to stop. And I always just give it a quick little pump. It's not going to do anything, but just kind of make sure that everything seats properly. And that's it. So this one's done. So the final assembly procedure is to install one of these O-rings into this grooved area here. And that one's pretty easy to do. You just kind of run the O-ring around until it seats properly, and then this is ready to install. And again, guys, make sure these bolts, these mounting bolts, are installed prior to pressing the hub. There's no way to get these guys on or off once this hub is on. All right, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you.